No.
Because we did talk about this, didn't we? Like,
yeah.
if you can see ahead a little bit, maybe you can see where the lottery is.
There is a very famous example of a guy who was an Irish member of the gentry, and I think it was in the 1920s, where he had a series of dreams whereby he predicted a horse winning a race. And I think he won thousands of pounds. I think it was about 6 or 7 races on the trot that he predicted, and he made a lot of money. Lord Kilgannon, I think, was his name.
Really?
And this is very worth checking out, because this was a really true event. And the guy Kilgannon was so good at this, he became the racing tipster on the Daily Mail, I think, or the Daily Express. And in fact, then it deserted him.
I bet the bookies hated him, didn't they?
They did initially, but it's as if you try to make too much money, you lose the ability to do so. It's as if it changes your life too much. These points are very good, and indeed I would like to stress, if anybody's interested in my theories, and there are thousands of people in the world that are now involved in this, I have a really active forum on my website, and please join.
Which is www.anthonypeake, Anthony with an H,
and anthonypeake.com, and the forum, if you do /forum, you'll get onto the forum. We've already got about 250 people on there.
And Peake has got an E on the end.
Peake and the E on the end. Just put your comments on there, join us. We're developing a worldwide group of individuals who are all fascinated by these questions.
Okay. Someone here saying, I don't know who this is, someone saying, all life is multidimensional, existing at the same time in many realities.
Spot on.
Our soul spirit is eternal and is one of the universal consciousness.
Spot on again. Very perceptive.
Whoever you are, tell us who you are next time.
Yeah, it's very much, that person's putting forward something called the Akashic Record.
Oh, this is a Jungian idea, isn't it?
Well, Jung, it's not necessarily Jungian, it's very much part of the occult tradition. The Theosophists had this concept as well, but the Jungian idea is the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of principle, that at a deeper level of reality, we're all the same thing. We're all a unified spirit. It's very much, again, the theories of somebody called David Bohm. And David Bohm was the guy that started something called the implicate order. And at the lower level of reality, everything is the same.
And he's the man whose name you've borrowed for your Bohmian IMAX.
Yeah, the Bohmian IMAX is the reality, the illusionary reality we live in.
This is like, because you describe it as an IMAX, because that's a cinema that's all engulfing, and it's like you're there, isn't it? Because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so there's a reality that we see, which is the Bohmian IMAX, and there's another reality which we don't see.
That's right. There's the reality which we
pleroma.
call the pleroma. Yeah. And the pleroma is, again, we're bouncing into another area here, which is the belief systems of what's called Gnosticism. And the Gnostics very much believe that there's a reality behind the reality. Also, the arguments about different times and all time being concurrent in one way. This is one of the things I'll be talking about at the National Theatre, and the idea that there is a time behind time. Because if you think about it, time is odd. Time is the only thing we measure by itself. If you sit down and think about it, you can only have a minute of a minute. You can have a pound of apples. But time is different. So what do we measure time by? The only thing we can measure time by is another time behind the time. And this is, again, what J.W. Dunn said.
But also, I mean, Einstein was the first one to say that time, well, as far as I know, the first one to say that time was relative.
To your speed and your location.
And he did a fantastic example of how that is so. I don't know if you know the description, but it's one that I remember really well, because it's so simple. And he was sitting on a tram leaving a town square in Switzerland. And there was the clock in the town square. And as he moved away from the clock, he realized that it took a little while for the light from the clock face to hit his eyes, and if he went fast enough, as fast as the speed of light, the clock in the town square would look like it had stopped, but for the people in the town square it would still be moving.
Yes.
So therefore time is relative. It's that simple.
And it's totally, and it's when you start to realize that time is the fourth dimension. Time is the backdrop by which we perceive things. But the most major question is time a construct of the mind, or is time a reality outside? And the philosophers, I've just finished reading a massive book on this, and the philosophers and the scientists are in total contradiction. In particle physics, you don't need time. Time can go either way. All we think of time is really Newton's law of thermodynamics, Newton's second or third law, I can never remember now. But the idea, that it's entropy, it's energy, and it's order becoming disorder. But that's not time, is it? Time is something I feel I'm travelling through. And is it time something that I'm travelling through or not? You know, and this is where you get some very deep ideas, and this is what J.B. Priestley was trying to put forward in his plays, his time plays. If you get the opportunity, and if anybody's down in London, do go and see this performance of Time on the Conways at the National Theatre. It is electric. It is so good.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to read this question out, because Aussie Dave says, what is consciousness?
Aha. Consciousness is the greatest mystery. The human brain is the most complex thing we know in the universe. The question is, how does a group of neurons firing in a particular way bring about the idea of perception, something called qualia? I see red, or I see the blue of your shirt. Where is that blue? What is processing that blue? It's my conscious awareness. But you could take.
We agree, though, don't we? I agree it's blue.
Oh, no, we agree that it's blue, but it doesn't mean that the experience of blue that I perceive is the same experience of blue that you do. You can never describe blue. You try and describe blue.
As a wavelength, I could describe it, couldn't I?
But that's a wavelength. That's a wavelength on our eyes.
I could say it's this long. Well, it's very small, actually, but, you know, I could...
But the idea would be, then, that the concept of blue, if you were a bat, you would presumably see sound waves as colour, because of the way they perceive things. And indeed, philosophers, there's a wonderful paper on being a bat, and the idea of what exactly is we perceive and how we perceive it. Now, consciousness is the great mystery, because how does consciousness, which is non-physical, make my arms move? How does consciousness, which supposedly can't be physical, become physical? Is consciousness an epiphenomenon of the brain, as they call it, or is it something more? Is my consciousness in my brain, or is my consciousness out there, and my brain is literally a receiver?
Well, in your book, The Daemon, you describe experiments where they've looked at people making decisions like moving their arm.
Yep.
And that when they think they're making the decision is not actually when their brain appears to be making that decision.
The brain makes the decision beforehand.
Before you're aware, I think what you say is, before you're aware that you've made a decision, you've made a decision.
You've made a decision. Exactly.
Which is kind of weird, isn't it? Well, it's extremely weird.
And it's weird, the idea. They did, Dean Radin and Dick Bierman did a series of experiments whereby they showed people just photographs of cars and things. But what they do is they test the skin, the electrolysis of the skin, of some description. It was a way of testing nervous reaction. And what they do is they'd flash photographs on a screen. And every time that just before they flashed a photograph of something like a horrific image or a naked woman or something like that, the skin reacted before the image was flashed.
Yes, I read that. That's in your book as well.
Yeah, and this implies that, again, this idea of what is time? Do we exist outside of time?
But I think you need to explain that a bit more fully. So what you're saying is then that according to these experiments, anybody or everybody that was tested had precognitive ability.
Had a form of precognitive ability. Now, either it's...
Because they knew, their skin knew was responding to... Because they were either really banal images like, I don't know, a park or something.
Yeah.
Or there'd be something horrific like, I don't know, a bomb blast or something horrible.
Well, the best one I know of this is the Phi experiment, PHI, the Greek letter. And it was suggested many, many years ago. And what the idea is that you have say a green light and a blue light, and you have them at a particular distance like that. And you have the green light, and you switch the green light on, and then you switch the blue light on. Now, it's known if you have two lights doing that at a certain distance, you get the idea of just a light going backwards and forwards.
Your brain sees a moving light.
Your brain sees a moving light. Mm-hmm. Now, what Nelson Goodman, who was a philosopher, suggested was, what would happen if, say, the light was green here and it was switched on, and the person didn't know the colour of the light as it came on? At what point would it change? Now, logically, if you don't know the colour, it has to be red, 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 and then go green when the green light comes on.
Because that's when you then know it's going to be green.
But as far as I'm aware, everybody that's experimented on this, it changes colour in the middle, even though you don't know the colour.
Because it could be any colour?
Because it could be any colour.
You don't know it's going to be green?
No, you don't know it's going to be green. Now, again, there's something else called the cutaneous rabbit.
So, hold on, what we're saying, I just want to backtrack on this, because what we've now said then is that there are two really good scientific experiments, double-blind, all that stuff, that show that everybody has precognitive powers.